Hello guys, every good name is taken here, and welcome to another video. And it's been a while, and today I got for you a membership request which was made by David, and he wanted me to talk about not maybe the top 5 but just tanks that I find enjoyable to play stock. And it's not gonna be like in order, it's just 5 tanks that are pretty nice. And the way I've done it, I've not done fully stock, because that is really annoying to do. I've done just the gun, because more often than not you already have previous modules from other tanks. Or it doesn't really do a lot like the tracks or the engine, which don't affect the tank all too much. But the gun is generally the biggest point that changes when you upgrade. And that's what we're talking about, and you will notice that there's a lot of TDs on this list. I think it's 3 out of 5 of these tanks are TDs. And that is just due to the fact that you don't have a turret that you need to upgrade, so more often than not you just have a gun, and those are usually already really good, even when you don't have the top one, which is why they are on this list. And the first tank that I want to be talking about is the WoTB, because I don't know. It has 2 good choices of guns. This one, the 128mm here, being the stock choice, if you wanna, you know, call it that. Even though it might not be the most accurate representation of the tank, or way to describe it, I guess. And the gun differs from the big one due to the fact that it doesn't have 640 alpha damage, but 460. You have more alpha damage of or more pen, sorry, of 246 over the 215 on your standard rounds. In terms of premium, you have a bit less, but it's tier 8. You're gonna pen most of your enemies regardless. You have a little bit less DPM though, because the reload is not, I don't know why, to be honest, but you lose out on DPM, but you get a lot of gun handling. You get 2.1 seconds aim time roundabout, which is really nice, and 0.31 accuracy compared to 2.6 aim time and 0.41 accuracy, so that's a big plus for gun handling there. Both guns have 5 degrees of gun depression, so that doesn't really change a whole lot. And as well, in terms of speed, they are similar. But yeah, there's not a lot different otherwise. I mean, you lose less camo when firing due to your caliber being lower, but that's going into a bit too much detail there, and I don't think it's necessary for this video. But yeah, you have just more gun handling. You lose out on a bit of premium round pen. You can't overmatch as much. You don't have heat, but APCR. So your premium round pen is a bit lower, but who cares? And yeah, this game here was quite nice. I played all of these games today, so on the date of recording. And this was actually the first game in the WoTB. And I'm at the mid part of the game. I thought, hey, this is going quite nicely. I think I can use this already. So first try, save some time, nice. Now I'm in a 1v1 here against that RS3. I get lucky, because he hits my tracks. Also because he didn't shoot HE, so that was on his part there, on why he didn't do that. So shooting HE, I'm not quite sure, and he's a one-shot for me, or a possible one, with his 448 hit points. I roll 460. I should be able to clear him on one shot. For safety, if I can, I would like to put an HE into him, like when he's not looking, just to really put him down to that one shot. But I am a one-shot too with his alpha. If he shoots HE, he is like rolling for 500 on average. So with a slight high roll there, I would die as my HE. He misses, and I'm like, alright, my reload is quicker. I'm faster reload. I shot before him as well, so I should get him 460 HP. And I low roll for 390. But he doesn't shoot HE, he just shoots AP, so I should be able to clear him here. Have to of course make sure that my turret is traversed, because the traverse speed is quite slow. And I'm able to clear him here with an HE, not want to risk anything, and I end the game with 4 kills, 4.7k damage, which was quite a nice result. Of course, again, I did get lucky. with the bounce that he put onto me. But that's not my fault, that just happens at times, and yeah. That is the first tank on the list, and let's move on to tank number 2. Moving on to tank number 2, we have the T92E1. And as you can see, I have more high tier tanks in here. All of them are 8 and plus, because generally low tier is not too interesting or stock alpha, so just keep that in mind. But going over the tank, it also has 2 different gun choices, which I do like to just use, or I don't know, it's basically how to put it. And yeah, I'm using the 105mm, I believe this is. It has 310 alpha damage. So it's not the 152 with the big alpha. I just prefer the smaller one. It also does not run the ATGM. And it gets quite a bit of benefits, and let's talk about those. So the first thing is you have way more DPM. As you all should know, the T92E1 has terrible DPM of 2400, and with this smaller gun you get 30% more and you bump it up to 2.7, which is really nice. And your pen goes up as well, but only by 10, which is not all that much, but it helps. Though your premium is worse, going down from 310 to 270. But as you're a light tank, you more often than not want to flank around anyway, so pen shouldn't matter all too much on that part. You, as I said, drop from 560 to 350 alpha, so you lose quite a bit there. But your rate of fire goes up tremendously. Your shell velocity as well, even though both are APCR, the big gun actually only has 700 meters per second, whilst the big one has around about 1000, so that's a huge difference than when you have to give lead. Also in aim time, of course, smaller caliber, you go from 2.4 seconds to 2.1, and your accuracy drops from 0.38 to 0.32, which is really nice, making you be able to snapshot way nicer with this tank. Your gun handling feels really good, and you don't have that long time you have to sit in front of your opponent to just aim in and hit your shot. Might not even hit it in the first place, and if you hit, you might not pen. So I prefer to run this gun normally, but as it's before the big one, which is considered this top gun, I'm putting this tank on the list. And other than that, there's not really anything different other than what I've just talked about. The tank has more of a different playstyle, I feel. It's more comparable to the Vickers, as you have that small alpha. You don't have that big long reload with that alpha damage, so you can be more active, more productive. You don't have to sit in one spot for too long to reload. It's just, I don't know, it feels nicer to have. And also this game was a first try. Had some bad shots like that one, which were poorly aimed. We are on 4 kills here, and it's just me and that 704. The KPF just missed its shot, and the 704 is now gonna get the kill shot here, and we end the game on 4.7k damage with quite a nice result, I would say. Also get a first class here. Nearly a pay, nearly an ace here, but that didn't matter to me too much. I think the game shows more than enough that the gun is competitive, and that you don't need to make that step up to the ATGM. And with that out of the way, let's move on to the next tank. And onto the next tank we go with the Centurion 7-1 here. And once again, not a TD. And this is not the stock gun, so it's not the first gun you get, but I still would consider this a stock, as it's not one of the 105s. But I want to talk about it anyway, because it is a nice gun. And let's talk about why. So first of all, this is the B barrel, so the second gun that you get. It is like the first gun, it has 190 alpha, like the Knaven, like the Centurion Mark 1, all those tanks. You have solid pen of 226. It's of course not comparable to the top gun of 255 on its APCR, but it's not the top gun anyway. It's not supposed to have that high pen yet. But I think it's good enough, as we're gonna see here. I'm facing this i7 101. What else can we talk about? Your reload stock is 3.9 seconds. I'm running calibrated shells here. Actually forgot to switch it there because I'm using usually hash on this tank, so my mistake on that part. But regardless, you can max it up to 3.9 seconds reload, giving you a DPM of nearly 3000. If you want to be precise, it's 2.9, which is 400 higher than the big gun, so you get quite a nice DPM there. Your shell velocity, of course, is way slower as you have AP as standard, and not APCR as the Top Gun has. In terms of premium rounds, you get a neat 258 pendo, which is comparable to the standard rounds of the Top Gun, so if you want to get a feel for that. Of course, you drop in alpha, but your shell velocity as well goes up, and I think it's quite a nice thing to have. It also has really good aim time. You have 1.72 seconds fully maxed out. With the Top Gun you have 1.9, which is also amazing, but you have a slightly better one, so even if you have the Top Gun and want to play with maybe more DPM, you can go for this, though as we talked about, the penetration might not really be worth that trade. And other than that, there's not a lot that changes on this tank. It's just you play more aggressively, you have to peek more often, and as you can see that here against the Emerald, I'm really risking it, even though I don't have to, and I end up dying. But we played quite nicely, and this game is gonna end in a loss here. So let's not waste too much time here. We did do 3100 damage though against a full i7 in a 1v1, and we got that ML2 quite low. And with the help or more help of the girl, we might have been able to win this game. But regardless, I still would like to say this game was quite nice and showed that this gun can work, especially since we were low tier. So don't overlook it. If you want to try it out, go for it. You don't need to skip this gun with free experience. And with that said, let's move on to tank number 4 on this list. And with that said, we now have the T-30, the tier 9 American tank destroyer. And once again, we don't have the full stock gun, but the second one, the 120mm here. And the reason for that is because you get this gun on the T28 prototype already. I don't really see the need of showcasing the 105. It's also not that great on the tank either. So let's talk about the 120 and why it's different or competitive compared to the big 155mm. And starting off, let's talk about the DPM, and the T30 does not have great DPM. It has 2.7k, which is of course good, but comparing that to other tier 9 TDs, especially when you have something like the SU, Yak Tiger or Tortoise compared to you, it's not that great. But if you choose to use the other gun that we're currently running here, you get, with 400 alpha damage and 8.2 seconds reload, up to a DPM of 2900, which is not that much of a step up. It's just about 10%, but I still think it's good enough and can be usable. Of course, due to that gun being on a tier 8 standard, you lose a lot of penetration. You have 248 compared to the 276. Of course, this is not like here you can use this gun. It's more of when you play it stock, you have enough pen to deal with your opponents, because it still is comparable, because most of the tier 10 heavies have around that penetration. Some of course do have more. So you have somewhat of a tier 10 gun on this tier 9 tank destroyer here, which has heavy tank characteristics and can be workable. Now your shell velocity is higher as well, because you don't have that big of a shell. But it's not that different. There's not too much of it actually. In terms of the premium rounds, we have 297 penetration, which if you compare that to the 320 premium, it's not that great, but it is enough to pen most tier 10s and all tier 9s if you know how to aim well. So you're not going to struggle in that regard. And it's quite nice here, as again, as it's a tank destroyer. You have that great gun from the tank before. You don't need to get a turret first. So yeah, overall It was an okay game, of course nothing special, but I think it was enough that you can even brawl with mediums with this, because your enemies are not going to expect it. I had a game before, which ended up not being too great, but I fought two opponents, which were a light and a medium, and they did not expect me to run the small gun, because usually you don't. You expect the opponent to be at max capabilities. And so they were overconfident, they rushed me. Took some time, of course, because they had ground to cover, but because of exactly that, I was able to shoot them more often and with higher DPM, actually being able to survive against, I think it was a 120 and a 3090, which if I had run the other gun would not have been possible. So you don't need to skip with 3 XP here again, but of course that's up to your choosing. And with that said, let's move on to the last tank of this list. And to end off with, we are now on tank number 5 of this video, and tanks that are enjoyable to play stock. We have the WZ-111 1GFT, Chinese tier 8 tactical tank destroyer, and it's actually one of my more favorable tanks at tier 8 TD. And that's not the point of this though. Let's talk about the gun. And your stock gun is a 120mm. It's not a 130 like the top gun is, meaning your average is only 400 and not 460. 460 of course is great, but it's not necessary. And I lost my point there, sorry. Because you have less alpha, you would think you have more DPM, which is actually not that case. In this case you have less of about 5%, you go from 2.6 to 2.7 when you get that bigger gun. But you have actually more standard penetration here. You have 248 compared to 245, so it doesn't matter in the greater scheme of things. But if you want to get the maximum out of your tank, you might want to know this. Now as you have 60 less alpha on your standard rounds, trading becomes a bit harder, especially when you trade shot for shot with your opponent, as TDs don't have a lot of hit points. You need to be careful with that. Your aim time, as the gun caliber is smaller, is quite a bit better. You have 1.7 seconds aim time, but if you compare that to the big gun, it has 2.5 seconds, so quite a big of a difference there. In terms of accuracy though, funnily enough, it goes up. So you have 0.32 compared to the top gun, which has 0.31. So not quite sure why that is the case, but you know what, let's not question it all too much. But other than that, there's not that much to it. Maybe talking about the premium rounds, which both have heat, so that's quite nice. You don't have to get used to anything different. We have 310 on the stock gun and 325 on the premium, on the top gun. So it's comparable. Both guns are great options. Of course, I would still recommend going for the big one, because this has more of a unique thing. And 130mm guns or 128 all have 600 alpha damage gun. This one doesn't. It has 660. Which is therefore giving you way more damage potential, being able to max roll up to 825, which is quite amazing if you ask me, and makes it a really great tank. We ended up having a really good game here, 4.5k damage, 2 kills. Weren't able to secure a victory here, but I don't think it is necessary to show that even this gun, even though it is stock and considered weaker, can perform really well, because there's not enough difference to say that this is a bad gun, and I still think this tank would be stock enjoyable. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. This was my 5 tanks that I think are enjoyable to play stock. We have the T92E1, the T30, Centurion 7.1, the Artem Bosig Waffenträger, and of course the last tank, the WZ-111G or 111 FT. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to know more in terms of that area of videos, let me know in the comments down below. And with that said, see you all again next time. Bye bye.